Hey everybody, welcome to my first live stream. So we will see how this goes. Hopefully I don't mess it up. Today we are going to be talking about if you're going to be traveling in the next few months, is it safer to fly or drive during COVID? And this was sparked by an article in the Washington Post. And I wanted to share it with you because as we're coming up on the holidays, you might be trying to decide which one you want to do or whether or not it's even safe at all to do either one. So let's go ahead and dive in and let me cover what I found. I'm going to be using notes since this is live and I won't be able to go back and edit and make changes. So bear with me. Okay, so like I said in a Washington Post article, before I get started, I'm Linda Jones with Crafted Travel Company. If you haven't seen my channel, come check it out. We talk about all things travel planning, travel reviews, tips and tricks to save money, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, come check it out. Okay, so this article is from the Washington Post, and it was referring to some specialists in the health arena to find out what they felt was the safer option as far as traveling goes. So they consulted three people. The first one was a CDC epidemiologist. Her name is Allison Walker. And her opinion was there's no such thing as safe travel. So she was recommending that you not travel, particularly during the holiday season this year because of not only COVID, but also the typical flu season and things of that nature. So she said no. They also asked a senior scholar at Johns Hopkins, the Center for Health Security, named Crystal Watson. And she said, while social distancing and staying away from groups is extremely important, mental health is also important, and part of that mental health is getting out of your house. So she was saying that if you are going to do one or the other, excuse me one second, the baby needed up. She's saying that if you wanted to do one or the other, driving, she felt was safer because you can control things more when you're driving. You can control who's around you. You control where you stop, where you go. There's more control than in an airplane that they might sit somebody right next to you or something of that nature. Or somebody gets on the plane and maybe they're asymptomatic. They don't realize they have it. And then they sit next to you or cough or something like that. So that was her opinion. Driving was safer. They also asked a risk mitigation specialist from International SOS. And I did not write down his name, but he's saying simply by moving to a new region, you open yourself up to new risk. Not only a new risk from you being infected by that new group of people, that new region, but also if you're asymptomatic, you could be infecting those people. So there's always risk inherent in that. But he also felt that if you were going to be traveling this holiday season or during COVID, between the two, he felt that driving would be safer. And again, simply because you can control the factors. You can control who's around you and the things that I said earlier. So those were the opinions of the three specialists, the three people that the Washington Post interviewed. So I went ahead and took it a step further and I found Dr. Mike Hansen. He is on YouTube and I'll go ahead and link that below as well. And he had some different opinions on if you were going to drive or fly, I should say, ways to protect yourself. So I just wanted to cover those really quick. If you decide you want to fly, these are the things that he said to keep in mind. The COVID, according to Dr. Hansen, spreads in three ways. And I think this is current knowledge about this. I know it's always evolving and changing, but I believe this is the current information about how it spreads. It's either by contact, it's by respiratory droplets. So that's what that 6 foot. So if someone coughs or sneezes without a mask, it could fly 6 to 12 feet. And he said that's like a ballistic missile hitting you, the actual droplet, but it's going to be bigger in size. And then there's also the airborne particles that remain in the air. So those are the three ways you can contract it. On airplanes nowadays, they have HEPA filters, as well as the fresh air that they're bringing into the cabin is coming through the engines at something like 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it is also sanitizing the air. So the air that is recirculating in an airplane is the equivalent of the N95 masks, which means it blocks out 95% of the, I believe, the airborne and the respiratory droplets that are in the air. So the air filtration system is a strong filtration system and really sterilizes the air. The problem is if you're sitting next to somebody and they cough and it's right in front of you and it hasn't gone through the filtration system, there is still that potential for catching it in that regard. Also from contact on the surfaces. So if someone sneezed all over the tray and you haven't wiped down the tray, there is that possibility. So in order to protect yourself when you're flying, he says to wear a mask, which I think is common knowledge. Hopefully everybody's wearing a mask. A lot of airlines nowadays, if you're one of the people that don't like to wear a mask, or you are saying that you don't, or you have a health problem that requires that you don't wear a mask, I don't believe you can fly. There's a lot of airlines that just simply won't let you on the airplane. And honestly, if you aren't wearing a mask, I would strongly advise against being on an airplane because it just opens you up for more infection. So always wear a mask. The other thing that he was saying is to wear wraparound goggles. And I'm going to link that below, and maybe I can find a way if I can put a picture somewhere. And they're the kind, if you know those sunglasses that kind of wrap around a bit, so they kind of touch over here when you're wearing them. He's saying you can get them on Amazon. They're just they look like glasses, but they kind of wrap around. And what that does is it prevents the air from blowing into your eyes, or prevents anything airborne from blowing into your eyes. And it's pretty inexpensive on Amazon. I'll link that below. And then also he's saying turn on the overhead jets, because stagnant air is the enemy, and you really want those overhead jets blowing that filtered air and blowing it out from in front of your face, which means you probably need to bring maybe a blanket or something, because sometimes those can get quite cold. Also stay away from people, which on a flight you're saying, well, how in the heck can I stay away from people? Well, it might be taking the first flight of the day, taking a red-eye flight. If you can, maybe sitting in business class, or even more possible, flying private, which there are airlines that can fly private that aren't as expensive as you're thinking. There are some that are shorter commutes that might make it a little bit more cost effective. If it's within your reach, then of course that is going to be a safer option as well, to stay away from people. The other thing is shorter flights. Not being on those 5, 6, 7, 10-hour flights if you can help it. The shorter duration, the less likely you are going to be stuck in a situation where there's no filtration, and you might be catching the virus or spreading the virus if you're asymptomatic and don't realize it. He said also bring hand sanitizer because you're going to be using it a lot, because even if you clean your hands now, you touch something, you might have to clean them again. You never know if somebody has touched it or sneezed on it or something has happened, so you always want to be mindful of that. And then not touching your eyes or your mouth or your mask even. And then disinfectant wipes. Keep a pack of those with you when you're flying. And when you first sit down, make sure you're wiping down the tray, the armrests, anything else that you might be touching. If there's a TV screen on the back in front of you, wiping all of those down so that it is as clean as possible when you go. Now he's saying this does not guarantee that you're not going to catch something. It just helps to minimize your chances of catching something. So it's a way to protect yourself. So that's flying. If you're driving, there are a few precautions you want to take as well. Luckily with driving, you can help control your environment more. So that's why the professionals were thinking that it was a little bit safer. But as they said, when you're going to a new region, you are still opening yourself up to the whatever infection, that new infection group in the new area. So you really want to be mindful of that. So when you're driving, you want to plan your route ahead of time, control your stops, try to avoid any big groups of people or any congested areas if you can. When you are at a stop for using the restroom or eating, make sure you're observing the social distancing, make sure you're wearing your mask, make sure you're washing your hands, not touching your eyes and face, same as we all know. The other thing is if you're staying in a hotel, call ahead or look at their website ahead of time and find out what their cleaning procedures are and whether or not they go into your room to clean, because a lot of times nowadays they will clean your room, they will put a sticker on the door so you know it's been cleaned and sanitized, and then they don't give you daily maid service because they don't want a person coming in and reinfecting your room once you're in there. So make sure they're observing some of those protocols and that they require masks in the lobbies and things to help control your risk exposure. The other possibility is maybe camp instead, or maybe get an RV, and that will help reduce your exposure to other people. I know it's not ideal to not be able to be with people. We need to be with people, but if you're only with your own family, whom most likely you've been living with and you've been around already, and then maybe you guys go camping, it helps to reduce that risk of exposure in new areas and new things. So all that being said, at the end of the day, is it safer to fly or drive? Well, ultimately it depends. It depends how far you're going. It depends on who you're going to be with. If you're going by yourself or you're going with family and it is within driving distance, perhaps choose the driving option. If it's too far away and you need to fly there, hopefully it's not too far of a flight, but observe those precautions we talked about to protect yourself as much as possible. Try, if that's the case, to avoid people. Try to get that early flight, that red-eye flight, or maybe fly in a different way. All right, so that is the wrap up of whether or not to fly or drive during COVID, which one is safer, and some tips from professionals on how you can protect yourself. If you enjoyed this video, if you would consider hitting that subscribe button and giving us a thumbs up, we would love to have you join